my fiancé of 3 years, who'd given me the silent treatment the entire time, publicly proposed to her first love at the biggest New York society event of the decade. Later, I posted a sweet announcement to my social feed, getting married soon. She called me late that night. "Leo, I never said I'd marry you." I replied sweetly, "And I never said the bride was you." After that, a set of photos went viral, shocking the whole city. The most powerful woman in New York, arms wide open, throwing herself into my embrace and tilting her head up to let me kiss her. When I stood up, my suit fitted and ready, the stylist couldn't help but whisper, "Mr. Jones, you look incredibly handsome in this suit." I thanked him quietly and pushed open the door, only to find a commotion brewing downstairs. In the grand, golden revolving door, there she was, Victoria, the woman I'd been engaged to for 3 years. And she was publicly holding the arm of a handsome young man. The most absurd part? He was wearing the exact same suit as me. Tonight was a gala the likes of which New York hadn't seen in decades. Everyone here was at the top of the food chain, sharp, shrewd, and with an eye for detail. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that the suit I was wearing was just a high-end knockoff. It was the first time in my 21 years that I'd ever been dressed up so extravagantly. Turns out I was just supposed to be the best-dressed clown in the room. "Victoria, who's this with you?" Someone nosy finally broke the silence. Victoria squeezed the hand of the man beside her. "This is my boyfriend, Kevin. But after tonight, he'll be my fiancé." "Then what about Mr. Jones?" Victoria shot me a cold look. "The engagement between my family and the Jones family has been terminated. For the past 3 years, the Vincents have done more than enough for the Joneses." She wasn't wrong. If it weren't for the $10 million engagement gift back then, the Jones family business would have gone bankrupt long ago. How else could my parents and siblings continue their lavish lifestyle? Victoria picked up a microphone, pulled out a luxury watch she'd prepared, and made a passionate proposal to Kevin. His eyes welled up, trembling with excitement as Victoria pulled him into her arms. She gently wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes, cooing and kissing him. I watched as Kevin was surrounded by all the fawning socialites and heirs, who were now chatting him up eagerly. After tonight, he would no longer be some nobody model or the other man people gossiped about. And as for me, Leo Jones, my family and I would likely have no place left in this city. "Excuse me, can you move?" A voice sounded from behind me. I turned around. 2 men who looked like rich kids were holding plates of appetizers, looking at me impatiently. I stepped aside. "His suit is so cheap." "I know, right? Who knows what kind of fabric they use for these knockoffs? I'd probably get a rash if I touched it." The nerve of him still standing here. How embarrassing. My face was expressionless as I walked toward the lounge area in the corner, pretending I hadn't heard their malicious whispers. My phone rang. I answered it. My father's voice, full of shame and anger, came through. "Leo, the Vincents are calling off the wedding. They want $5 million of the dowry back. You couldn't even hold on to one woman in 3 years. You're useless. Find the $5 million yourself. The family isn't giving you a dime." I stared at the disconnected call, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. The glittering lights and the glamorous crowd had nothing to do with me. I just wanted to escape. I heard Ms. Vance returned to the city yesterday. She might attend the gala tonight. Unlikely. Ms. Vance almost never attends events like this. True. After all, her last public appearance was on a network news special. I clutched at my chest, a dull ache starting. I reached into the inner pocket of my suit jacket for my medication. The rustling sound startled the 2 people talking. Their conversation stopped, and their footsteps faded away. The pain in my chest sharpened, turning into spasms. The tailored suit felt suffocatingly tight. I couldn't bother searching for my pills anymore. I needed to unbutton my shirt, to take a deep breath. But I tried several times and failed. My father's stylist had given me a new pair of cufflinks today. They were exquisite, but at this crucial moment, my fingers were stiff with panic. I couldn't get them undone. I tilted my head back, gasping for air. My bangs were soaked with cold sweat, and my lips were turning a pale, ashen color. Not far away, the party was just getting started. My ex-fiancée and her sweetheart were probably sharing a romantic dance. And I might just die quietly on this silent deck. Ms. Vance, are you heading in now? Eleanor Vance didn't answer. She simply took the cigarette case her male assistant handed her. She plucked out a slim, pale gray cigarette and opened a small, exquisite box. She didn't light the cigarette but dipped the tip into a fine, dark ochre-colored powder. After tapping the cigarette lightly, she gestured to her assistant. The assistant quickly offered a lighter, and Eleanor lit her cigarette. You all go ahead. I'm going to finish this. With that, Eleanor Vance walked a few steps toward the deck railing. It's windy out here, please be careful. The crowd that had been surrounding her tactfully dispersed. Returning to the city this time, Eleanor was poised to consolidate her power. From now on, in all of New York, if she said one, no one would dare say two. The organizer of tonight's gala had pulled every string imaginable just to get her to make an appearance. She hadn't been particularly interested, but the moment she returned, her family elders had started nagging her about marriage, giving her a headache. So she decided to use this as an excuse to get some peace and quiet. But she was only halfway through her cigarette when she noticed a thin, somewhat fragile figure in the distance. She had the impulse to stub out her cigarette and leave. But then she heard a dull thud on the deck. Eleanor turned her head slowly. In the dim moonlight, the figure was collapsed on the deck, exuding a kind of broken beauty that seemed out of place on a man. My face must have been a ghostly blue-white, starved of air. The faint moonlight cast a distorted, unrecognizable expression on my face, stripping it of any handsomeness. I looked at the strange woman in front of me as if she were a lifeline. I clutched her sleeve tightly. The will to survive gave me a strength I never knew I had. I managed to pull her arm and press it against my chest. My breathing was terrifyingly rapid, my heart rate completely erratic. She took one look at me and seemed to understand. She knelt on one knee, her long, slender fingers closing around my wrist. "Where are your shirt buttons?" she asked, her voice low and calm. I couldn't speak. I struggled to grab her hand again and press it to my chest. Her elegant brows furrowed slightly. She moved my hand and looked down at my collar. A moment later, her fingers undid the complex row of buttons. I felt a sudden lightness as the constriction around my chest and lungs vanished. Air rushed in and I greedily gasped for breath. But I had completely forgotten that, because of my chronic heart condition, I had a medical monitoring patch stuck to my chest. Now, with my shirt wide open, it was all exposed for her to see. My senses came rushing back. I bit my lip for a long moment before blushing and looking up, whispering my thanks. "Thank you. Can you stand?" I nodded. Clutching my jacket with one hand and holding the railing with the other, I managed to get back on my feet. "Should I call your family or a friend for you?" Quickly shook my head. "No, that's not necessary. I'll be fine after a little rest." Her phone suddenly rang. I saw her step aside and answer it. "I told you I have my own plans for marriage. Relax, I won't let Grandma pass away with regrets." She seemed annoyed and lit another cigarette. The glowing tip illuminated her cool, elegant profile. I suddenly felt like I'd seen her somewhere before. Just then, she turned her head, her gaze meeting mine. Quickly looked down. She put her phone away and walked toward me. The smoke from her cigarette was a bit strong. I coughed uncomfortably a few times. "Sorry," she said, stubbing out the cigarette. She gestured to my suit. "Just give the jacket to a server." My face immediately flushed red again. I nodded, whispering, "Okay." Her gaze fell to my fingers. I was still tightly gripping the lapels of her jacket. My shirt was open underneath, my chest bare except for the medical patch. It was an intimacy no one but me was aware of. I hunched my back slightly, feeling self-conscious. Just as she was about to turn and leave, I spoke in a low voice. I heard your phone call just now. Could I make a deal with you?" I dared to lift my eyes and look at her. Maybe she needed a husband, a hassle-free husband who could disappear at any time. And I needed $5 million to buy my pathetic freedom. A deal? "What kind of deal do you want to make with me, Mr. Jones?" I was so nervous I didn't even notice she knew my name. "Do you need a husband?" I gathered all my courage and looked her straight in the eye. I won't cause you any trouble. I will cooperate with you in every possible way. And of course, when you don't need me anymore, I will never bother you. She looked at me in the moonlight, her silver gray backless gown clinging to her tall, slender frame. Her features were delicate but sharp, her aura cool and detached. I saw the custom-made watch on her wrist, which could probably buy the entire luxury yacht we were on. What are your terms? I froze for a second, then spoke slowly, my voice thick with shame. I need $5 million. What for? I lowered my gaze, unable to meet her eyes. But in front of a stranger, it seemed easier to expose my own desperation and helplessness. My fiancé is breaking off the engagement. I have to return half of the dowry, $5 million. I don't have it. Breaking off the engagement. She suddenly looked at me, her gaze impossibly sharp. Yes, breaking it off. I let out a small, bitter laugh and lifted my face. The sea breeze tousled my hair. I stared blankly into the night. I have no other options, ma'am. I accept the deal. But I have one condition. I looked at her, my eyes wide with disbelief. Ma'am? We get married within 3 days. That's so fast. You heard my call. My grandmother isn't well. She's anxious to see her granddaughter's husband. After she spoke, she raised an eyebrow at me. Is that a problem? Quickly shook my head. No, not at all. It's fine. Then it settled. The wind was picking up. She suddenly took a step forward. I'll have someone pick you up the day after tomorrow. But how do you know where I... She didn't answer my question. As she retracted her hand, her fingertips seemed to brush against my cheek. Or maybe it was just my imagination. She was gone for a long time, but I was still trapped in a dreamlike, unreal state, until a slightly tipsy Victoria suddenly walked over and grabbed my wrist. Leo, for 3 years, I waited for you to bow your head and beg me. If you were just willing to be submissive like all those other men, I would have given your family not just 10 million, but 100 million. You're drunk? Victoria, I tried to push her away, but a drunk person is notoriously difficult to handle. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared at me, then her gaze fixed on the suit I was wearing. Whose clothes are you wearing? It's none of your business, Victoria. None of my business? Her beautiful face twisted in a sneer. Leo Jones, I'd like to see who dares to touch my man. She grabbed the jacket I was wearing and yanked it open. I tried to hold it closed, but it was futile. The sea wind howled, and under the moonlight, my bare, firm chest was completely exposed. Leo, Victoria whispered, stand. The next second, a male voice rang out. Leo, have you no shame? Oh my God. How could he strip down to seduce someone else's fiancée? Look at Miss Vincent. She's mesmerized. Kevin, you need to learn a thing or two from him. I snapped back to reality, frantically trying to cover myself. But Kevin was already charging at me, shouting and swinging a fist at my face. What is going on here? A cool, level female voice suddenly cut through the chaos. Kevin's fist stopped mid-air. A second later, Victoria pulled him aside. I quickly took a step back, raising my arms to shield my chest. Hearing the voice, everyone turned. Someone gasped, "It's Ms. Vance." Which Ms. Vance? Who else could it be? It's Eleanor Vance. My eyes slowly widened as I looked past the crowd at Eleanor. The woman on the deck who had unbuttoned my shirt. The woman I had brazenly offered to marry for $5 million. She was the renowned Eleanor Vance. Eleanor only glanced at me before looking away. Then she turned to her assistant and said something. The assistant immediately moved through the crowd and came to my side. "Mr. Jones, let me take you downstairs to rest." I nodded stiffly and thanked him. As he helped me leave, I couldn't resist looking back. The crowd had quietly parted, everyone standing respectfully, holding their breath. "Ms. Vance, this is a misunderstanding." Victoria, now mostly sober, was explaining cautiously. "What misunderstanding?" Eleanor's voice was still calm, showing no signs of anger. I slowly paused, standing around the corner. Her assistant didn't rush me, waiting patiently. Victoria's voice trembled slightly. "I brought Kevin here. He's my boyfriend. He must have misunderstood and lost his composure. Eleanor's eyes grew stern, a hint of displeasure showing. I find it hard to believe that any gentleman in New York society today would behave with such a lack of breeding. Victoria was mortified. Kevin looked so ashamed he was on the verge of tears. Eleanor instructed her staff, "Escort this gentleman off the ship." "Victoria," Kevin cried, clinging to her sleeve, refusing to let go. Having been in this circle for years, he knew exactly how serious this was. Being kicked off the ship like this would be all over the city by morning. He would become a laughingstock with no chance of recovery. "Ms. Vance, Kevin knows he was wrong. Please give him another chance." Eleanor gave her a placid look. "Miss Vincent is more than welcome to leave with him." Victoria shut her mouth and pulled her hand back. Kevin was quickly escorted off the ship. The others on the deck quietly dispersed. No one had expected the drama to end like this. "Mr. Jones." The assistant's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. I turned in surprise. Eleanor was walking toward me. She waved her assistant away and asked me in a warm voice, "Leo, are you scared?" I shook my head, stunned. No. Let me take you back to rest." Eleanor raised her hand and gently took my wrist. "Is that okay?" My head was spinning. I nodded numbly and let her lead me away. "Let's go." The hallway wasn't long, and we soon reached a private lounge. She saw me inside and then left to attend to her own business. I sat alone in the quiet room for a long while before I finally calmed down. But only after calming down did I belatedly realize something. At first, Eleanor had called me Mr. Jones. But just now, she called me Leo. She knew my name? She knew who I was? Her assistant brought a new set of clothes. I took a shower and changed. I folded Eleanor's suit jacket and placed it in a bag. I wanted to have it dry cleaned before returning it to her. "Ms. Vance instructed me to personally escort you home, Mr. Jones, should you wish to leave." The assistant looked to be in his 30s and was very professional. "Could you please also tell Ms. Vance that I'm taking her jacket to have it dry cleaned first?" "That's not necessary, Mr. Jones. You can just give it to me." I didn't insist. I handed him the bag and asked, as if casually, "How does your boss know my name?" The assistant just smiled. "That is Ms. Vance's private business." As I disembarked, I received a text from an unknown number. "Leo, this is Eleanor Vance. Save my number." I stared at the message for a while before finally pressing my lips together and replying, "Okay. Saved. I'll pick you up the day after tomorrow. Get some rest." "Okay." She didn't text again. It was late when I got back to the Jones residence. But no one was asleep. The lights were all on. But the atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. Seeing me walk in, my father immediately stood up. "Leo, have you figured out what to do? What on earth did you do? How did you make Miss Vincent so angry that she wants to call off the wedding?" "Yeah, Leo, don't you know our family's business depends on the Vincents to stay afloat? $5 million. Where are we going to get that kind of money now? Your sister-in-law is about to have her third child. Are you trying to kill us?" Everyone was blaming me for not being able to hold on to Victoria, for not marrying into her family successfully, so they could continue to bleed me dry. But when they pushed me, their sickly eldest son, forward to save their healthy second son, did they ever ask if I was willing? When they used the Vincent's $10 million gift to cover their losses and maintain their luxurious lifestyle, did I ever see a penny of it? Now that the Vincents wanted to call it off, they wouldn't contribute a cent of the $5 million, and they expected me to bear it all. Fine. I was willing to bear it. But after this, I would no longer be a member of the Jones family. "Leo, say something." My sister-in-law stood up and gave me a light, annoyed push. "The $5 million. I found a way." "You really have a way?" I saw my father's eyes light up instantly. "It just might damage the Jones family name." "What do you mean by that?" I gave a very faint smile. "At the gala tonight, I met a wealthy businesswoman from the Philippines. When she heard about my predicament, she offered to pay the $5 million for me. However, she has a husband and children, so I can only be her kept man. I had no other choice, so I agreed. But this means we'll be seen together, and our relationship won't stay a secret for long. How could you do something so shameless? Exactly. The Joneses are a respectable family with a long pedigree. If you become a kept man, you'll disgrace us for generations to come. Then what do you suggest? Why don't you sell off some of your assets and give the 5 million to the Vincents? No one answered. The room fell silent. Leo, my mother, who hadn't spoken, finally said, "The Vincents' 5 million must be paid, and the Jones family's honor cannot be tarnished." I let out a deliberate, cold laugh. "Then you might as well just disown me." My sister-in-law clutched her stomach and muttered, "Finally, you get the picture. Here's the plan," my mother finally decided. The Jones family would place an ad in the papers announcing they were severing ties with me, but it would just be a public formality. I would still be their son, and they wouldn't truly disown me. Of course, I knew this was just a trick to placate me. The moment the 5 million was delivered to the Vincents, I'd be thrown out on the street. But they didn't know that was exactly what I wanted. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I got a call from Eleanor Vance. "Leo, check your notifications. The transfer should have gone through." I quickly opened my messages. Sure enough, the deposit had been made 10 minutes ago. "I got it. I'm going to handle the engagement cancellation today. I'll have my driver pick you up." "Eleanor, can I ask you for a favor?" "Go ahead. Can we not let anyone else know we're getting married for now?" I didn't want my family of greedy vampires latching onto Eleanor and causing her unnecessary trouble. "You don't want people to know?" "Not forever, just for now." "Is that okay?" "Fine. I'll have someone else pick you up then." Once the 5 million was returned to Victoria and the Jones family publicly disowned me, I would fully cooperate with whatever Eleanor wanted, whether it was a public marriage or a secret one. By then, because I'd already been disowned, my family wouldn't be able to bother her in any way. After wiring the money to Victoria's account, I took a screenshot of the confirmation. When Victoria's call came, I was looking at the small classified section of the newspaper, where I found my family's statement severing ties with me. I stared at those few lines of text, reading them over and over. Then I took a photo of it and carefully folded the newspaper away. Victoria's voice was hoarse. "Leo, where did you get the money? 5 million is no small amount. The Jones family couldn't afford it. Who gave it to you? Tell me. That's none of your business. You got your money. We have nothing to do with each other anymore." I was about to hang up, but Victoria suddenly called my name. "Leo, do you really think this was about the $5 million? Whatever it was about, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Leo, you should know, if I don't give the word, no woman in this city will dare to have you." I let out a small laugh. "Is that so? If you don't believe me, you can try." I didn't want to waste any more words on her and hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I was about to block the number when I saw 3 words on the screen. "Eleanor Vance. The Jones family is disowning you? How did you know?" I was surprised. Her information network was incredibly fast. "Leo." "Yes? If you're hurting, you don't have to pretend you're not." I really hadn't wanted to cry. I honestly hadn't. Growing up, I had gotten used to it, so used to it that I was numb. "I'm not hurting." But when someone shows you kindness, you always become more fragile. So when I spoke, my voice was already thick with tears. "Leo, you can cry in front of me. After all, starting tomorrow, I'll be your wife." The tears finally fell. "But before you become my wife, I've given you another identity." "What identity?" I explained in a quiet, timid voice. Eleanor was silent for half a minute before she finally spoke. "So, my current identity is a 60-year-old, married, wealthy Chinese-Filipino businesswoman, and you are my kept man? Are you mad?" Over the phone, I heard what sounded like a soft sigh. "Leo, I'll see you tomorrow. Are you still going to marry me?" I could clearly tell she was a little unhappy just now. "Get a good rest tonight, and wear your most handsome suit tomorrow." Eleanor must have made all the arrangements in advance. The entire process of getting our marriage license was incredibly fast. Once we had the certificate, Eleanor took me to the hospital. She held my hand the entire time, which made us look like a very affectionate couple. Her grandmother was very ill. She could only manage a weak smile at me, but her eyes held a look of relief. I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. To deceive a dying old woman like this. She must love her exceptional granddaughter very much, hoping she would have a happy marriage. But she had no idea that I wasn't really Eleanor's husband. After leaving the hospital, Eleanor had an important meeting, so she had her driver take me to get my luggage. The driver was a veteran who had worked for the Vance family for years and had watched Eleanor grow up. His hair was white, but he was still full of energy. When my family saw him get out of the car and open the door for me, they all assumed he worked for my benefactor. They looked down on me for my new status as a kept man, so no one spoke to me. I came downstairs with my suitcase. Only my mother said a few words to me. This is just a temporary measure. You'll move out for a while. Leo, once this blows over, we'll bring you back home. I deliberately asked in a pitiful tone, how long will I have to wait? It depends on the situation. Then you have to keep your word. Don't worry. As I dragged my suitcase away, I could feel a palpable sense of relief from everyone in the Jones family. The driver took me to Eleanor's private residence. The house wasn't enormous, but the surroundings were incredibly serene. There weren't swarms of maids and servants, which made me feel much more relaxed. Sir, Ms. Vance instructed that you should make yourself at home. She will be back tonight. But at 8 o'clock, I got a call from Eleanor. She had to go out of state for a very important meeting and would probably be back in about a week. If you get bored, go out with friends, go shopping, have some tea. Don't just coop yourself up at home all day. Then I'll go stay at my small apartment for a few days. It's close to Midtown, so everything is convenient. Okay, I'll pick you up there when I get back. Okay. On the third day of Eleanor's business trip, a fellow volunteer from my charity work called me. He invited me to a small charity auction for the elite circle. I was very interested in the theme, a fundraiser for children with congenital heart disease. When I arrived, I saw a lot of familiar faces. Among them was Kevin. Though he was still dressed impeccably, he looked pale and unwell. It seemed that being kicked off the yacht that day had affected him more than I'd imagined. Kevin saw me too, but he just gave a scornful laugh and turned to talk to the person next to him. Is it true? He became a kept man? Of course it's true. His parents were so ashamed they disowned him in the papers. Didn't you see it? I heard his sugar mama is almost 80, old enough to be his grandmother. Oh my God, how can they invite someone like that to a charity event? Yeah, we shouldn't be at an event with someone like him. Let's ask him to leave. The scene grew chaotic. The friend who invited me looked extremely embarrassed. Leo, maybe you should come back another time. I didn't want to make things difficult for him, so I stood up to leave. But just as I reached the door, I ran into Victoria. Leo? I ignored her and kept walking, but Victoria grabbed my wrist. Are you here to see me? I pulled my hand away. No, I just heard about your situation today. Victoria blocked my path again. Leo, give the money back. Why? Couldn't help but sneer. Isn't 5 million what you wanted? Leo. Victoria's face darkened. I told you if you just submit to me once. Submit how? I pushed her away again. You want me to kneel at your feet like a dog and thank you for your charity? It was laughable. No one knew that the seemingly perfect Miss Vincent's favorite private pastime was using her money and power to degrade people. My life wasn't worth much, but I wasn't willing to grovel and be humiliated like that. Leo, your reputation is in ruins. You need to think about the consequences of your actions. Victoria changed the subject. You're so young, becoming a kept man. Your reputation is ruined for life. That's my choice. Leo, I'm offering you a way out. Is that so? I don't need it. I walked around her and continued toward the exit. Victoria's voice was low behind me. Leo, I'm only giving you one chance. When you've thought it through, come find me. I didn't look back. But that night, I got a call from my landlord. He ordered me to move out immediately. I didn't argue with him. I just packed my things and went downstairs. I never expected to see Eleanor's car waiting for me. The driver got out and took my suitcase. Sir, Ms. Vance sent me to pick you up. Eleanor, is she back? Ms. Vance's flight gets in tomorrow morning. My eyes suddenly started to burn. Is she done with her work? She was supposed to be gone for a week. This was only the 4th day. Ms. Vance was worried you were having a hard time. She was concerned. I'm fine. Her work is important. She shouldn't neglect it for me. I sat in the car, my mind a mess. I couldn't describe the complicated feeling. It was as if a pathetic wretch, abandoned by the whole world, had suddenly been given a gold mine. When we arrived at Eleanor's place, I had just gotten back to my room when her call came through. Leo. Eleanor's voice was still tinged with exhaustion. I suddenly felt incredibly ashamed. To escape my family, I had deliberately tarnished my own reputation. Her work was so demanding, and yet I was constantly causing her more trouble. If I had just stayed put at her house, none of this would have happened.
Eleanor, I'm sorry.
Leo, Eleanor said, a hint of resignation in her voice. I'm not blaming you. Never mind. We'll talk properly when I get back tomorrow. After I hung up, a friend request popped up in my messaging app. It was from Eleanor. I accepted. Her feed had only one post, from 3 days ago. It was a single photo, our marriage certificate. I couldn't see what the people commenting below had said. I could only see her 2 replies to a friend. Yep, married. Let me introduce you. My husband, Leo. That night, I also posted something to my feed. Just 3 simple words. Getting married soon. A lot of people left comments and a friend called me. When I picked up, it was Victoria's voice. What, you've thought it through? I said I'd give you a chance, but I never said I'd marry you. I couldn't help but laugh. And I never said the bride was you. You're going to marry that old hag? Leo, you'd rather debase yourself and be with a married woman. I hung up and blocked her number. That night, it felt like my mind was full of 1,000 things. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I only drifted off as the sky was getting light. I didn't even know Eleanor had come home. When I opened my eyes, I saw a figure emerge from the bathroom. I was so startled I almost screamed. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. It's me, Leo. It's Eleanor. Don't be afraid. I pressed a hand to my racing heart, my face still pale. Eleanor pulled me into her arms, gently stroking my back. Breathe slowly, don't be nervous, relax, it's okay, Leo. I buried my face in her shoulder, and after a while, my breathing slowly returned to normal. I'm okay now, I whispered, my face blushing. I'm sorry I scared you. Eleanor smoothed my messy hair. Why did you sleep so late? I had a little trouble sleeping last night. I felt a little awkward. My pajama pants were thin, and just now she had held me so tightly, with only a thin layer of fabric between us. My face was burning up. I clutched the blanket, wanting to wrap myself in it, but that felt even more conspicuous. Just as I was wondering what to do, Eleanor gently laid me back down. Sleep a little longer. It's almost noon anyway, we can just have lunch. She very naturally pulled the thin blanket over me. I'm going to the study for a bit. I'll come get you later. As I watched her leave, I let out a sigh of relief. It was fine during the day. She spent most of her time in the study, busy with work. But at 9 o'clock that night, she returned to the master bedroom and showed no signs of leaving. Honestly, I had thought about the possibility of marital duties. After all, I was the one who had promised to cooperate with all her needs. I watched Eleanor come out of the bathroom. After a long hesitation, I finally asked softly, "Are you sleeping here tonight?" Eleanor glanced at me but didn't say anything. My mind raced. Maybe Eleanor just needed a husband in name only. Maybe I had been overthinking it. I grabbed my pillow and got out of bed, testing the waters. Well, I'll go sleep in the guest room. She still said nothing. I turned with my pillow and started walking. After a few steps, I felt arms wrap around me from behind. Didn't you say you would fully cooperate with my needs? Ms. Vance. My back was pressed against her chest. I could feel the warmth and curve of her body. I could feel her heart beating, strong and steady. Her skin temperature seemed to be rising, and the heat made me dizzy. Eleanor bent her head, her fingers brushing aside the hair at my neck. Leo, you're my husband now. The kiss that followed was intermittent and broken. Tell me if you feel uncomfortable anywhere. Eleanor touched my flushed face, waiting until my heartbeat steadied before proceeding. There were several times I thought I was about to suffocate, but Eleanor always managed to stop herself at just the right moment. I could feel her body trembling, her breathing growing rapid. My own heart was pounding just as fiercely, my own breath just as short. I was in distress, and she seemed to be in even greater distress than I was. "Leo," she murmured, her voice slightly hoarse. She leaned over and gently kissed my cheek. "Are you feeling better?" I shook my head, then nodded. My eyes were already hazy with a fog of desire. It was as if I was pushing her away, but it felt more like I was inviting her closer. Her eyes were filled with raw want. For one fleeting moment, I even had the illusion that Eleanor Vance was in love with me. "Leo, at the very end, I think I lost consciousness for a second. But it wasn't painful like when I had my attacks. Instead, my whole body felt like it was floating on a cloud, wrapped in its soft embrace. Until Eleanor gently woke me. "Leo, are you uncomfortable anywhere?" I shook my head again, simply reaching out to wrap my arms around her waist. "It seems a man has a natural dependency on his first woman. Rest for a bit, then we'll take a shower." She said this as her fingers came to rest over my heart. "Does your chest hurt?" "It's okay." I thought about the times she had stopped mid-motion. I couldn't help but ask quietly, "Eleanor, will you be uncomfortable?" She cradled my face and kissed me, her voice deep and husky. "If you keep asking, you're gonna make me really uncomfortable. No more, okay, no more." But she didn't let go of me. "I just want to kiss my Leo." I stopped talking, obediently letting her kiss me. My mind was in a daze, but I had one clear thought. When she called me Leo, she sounded so incredibly fond of me. But a person as serious and self-disciplined as her would probably only call me that in bed. I never got a chance to test that theory, because the next morning, Eleanor left early again. I knew she was extremely busy. Being in her position meant dealing with an endless stream of matters, big and small. So I stayed home obediently, trying my best not to cause her any more trouble. Even though I didn't go out, the days were extraordinarily peaceful and quiet. It was the first time in my 21 years that I had felt such serene contentment. I didn't have to worry about being sold off like a commodity by my family. I didn't have to grieve over my parents' and relatives' favoritism. I didn't have to think about anything. I could just do what made me happy. I even started playing the piano again, which I hadn't touched in years. This life of a homebody lasted for about a week. One afternoon, Eleanor suddenly called and told me there was a banquet that night she wanted me to attend. She had already prepared a suit and a watch for me, and a team of stylists would be coming to the house shortly. "Will you be there tonight? I'll head straight there to meet you after I finish my work." "What kind of banquet is it? Is it absolutely necessary for me to go?" "It's a charity fundraising dinner for children with congenital heart disease." "I thought you'd want to go." I was touched. The last charity event I tried to attend, the one where Kevin spread vicious rumors about me, had also been for children with CHD. So Eleanor had remembered. Because of my own heart condition, I had always been very passionate about this cause. I still remembered that after my engagement to Victoria, I had continued my monthly volunteer work without fail. I would visit the sick or disabled children at the orphanage. But Victoria had once sneered, "You're quite skilled at putting on a show for reputation's sake." She didn't know that I wasn't doing it for show. It was simply because I had suffered the same way, and I wanted to help more children like me. "Eleanor, of course I'm willing to go. But if you show up tonight, our situation won't be a secret anymore." I wanted to ask her if it would cause her any problems or have a negative impact. "Leo, from the very beginning you were the one who wanted to keep it private, not me." "Eleanor," I clutched the phone, murmuring in confusion, "I don't understand. Why did she agree to my proposal? Why did she never think of hiding our marriage? Why, of all people, me?" "I'll answer you when we get home tonight." When I arrived at the banquet, I naturally attracted countless strange looks. What puzzled me, however, was this. A charity gala that Eleanor Vance would attend was obviously a top-tier event. The Vincents might have the status to be there, but the Jones family certainly did not. And yet, there was Victoria, and my family was there too. When I walked in, the Joneses were clustered around Victoria, fawning over her. and my own blood brother, Ian, was looking at Victoria with a fawning, heated gaze. "Leo, you have the nerve to show your face here?" After Ian spoke in surprise, my father immediately walked over, his face grim. "Leo, do you have any idea what kind of event this is? You came here to embarrass yourself. What will people think of our family?" I looked at the stern-faced, middle-aged man before me, my heart completely devoid of feeling. "Didn't you already announce our separation in the papers? So, I have no connection to the Jones family. If I embarrass myself, it has nothing to do with you. But you're still a Jones. Everyone in New York knows you're my son. Then what do you propose I do? Leo, you should leave New York. Have your sugar mama take you abroad, or back to the Philippines. Didn't Mom promise I could come back after things blew over?" My father looked at me as if I were an idiot. "What fantasy are you living in? You've already been removed from the Jones family registry." "Really? Of course it's real. So, you're saying that legally and genealogically, I have no relationship with the Jones family whatsoever?" "That's right. Good." I turned to face the crowd. "I'm sure everyone heard what Mr. Jones just said. Leo, you should just go. Why make a scene and lose all face?" Ian said, feigning magnanimity. "Miss Vincent is here. Don't let her see this embarrassing spectacle." Just then, Victoria also spoke up. "Leo, didn't you say you were getting married? Miss Vincent, her benefactor, has a husband and kids in the Philippines. She's got lovers all over the world. She'd never actually marry him. So your social media post that day was a lie?" I was about to say something, but Victoria had already stepped forward and grabbed my arm. "Leo, I'm asking you one last time." Before she could finish, the ballroom suddenly fell silent. "Ms. Vance is here. Why would Ms. Vance come to such a small banquet? How should I know? But tonight was worth it. Getting to see the legend in person. Why is Ms. Vance coming this way? Oh my God. Why is she looking in this direction? Is she looking at the eldest son of the Jones family?" Hearing these whispers, Ian's face flushed a deep red. My father's face also showed unconcealable delight. I turned to look at Eleanor. She was wearing a black gown, looking serious and unapproachable. In that moment, I felt a sense of surrealism. This woman, whom I had only ever seen on television and in newspapers, was now my wife. She had kissed me many times. She called me Leo. She was truly gentle with me, like a very, very good wife. "Leo," Eleanor spoke. It was the first time she had called me by my first name in public. Not Leo Jones, but the intimate, private Leo. The smile on Ian's face froze comically. My father was also stunned. Victoria looked utterly shocked. She walked through the crowd and came right up to me. "This suit fits you well. The cufflinks match you perfectly. You look very handsome." Eleanor, in front of everyone, Eleanor pulled me into her arms. There. I was only a few minutes late, and you're already getting bullied." As she said the word bullied, her gaze swept lightly over the crowd. My father's face went pale. Ian instinctively hid behind him. Eleanor's gaze finally landed on Victoria. "Miss Vincent, what were you just chatting with my husband about?" The word husband from Eleanor's lips was like a bombshell. The dead silent crowd immediately broke into a controlled, buzzing murmur. Victoria, as if still in disbelief, asked haltingly, "Husband?" "Yes. Leo Jones is my husband." As soon as Eleanor finished speaking, my father seemed to snap out of his stupor. He rushed to my side and grabbed my arm affectionately. "Leo, my boy, such wonderful news. Why didn't you tell your father?" I pushed his hand away. "Mr. Jones, I am no longer part of your family." Mr. Jones froze, then quickly said, "What father and son don't have disagreements? It's just a misunderstanding we can talk through." I shook my head. "There's nothing to talk about. The Jones family and I have no connection. The family records prove it." My father was sweating profusely. He turned to Eleanor with an eager look. "Ms. Vance, you see, our Leo is just being childish. He's still upset with me. I listened to my husband." Eleanor put her arm around me, her voice cold. "Leo says he has no connection to the Jones family, so he has no connection." "Ms. Vance," my father looked utterly grief-stricken. "Mr. Jones, Eleanor suddenly spoke. To my knowledge, the Jones family has not donated a single cent to charity in the last 10 years. At these words, my father broke into a cold sweat, trying to stammer out a defense but failing to form a single word. So they've never donated a dime? Then why do they fight tooth and nail to get into every charity gala? To build their reputation, obviously. How shameless. Unable to bear the humiliation, my father dragged Ian away in defeat. Eleanor held me. Leo, let's go home too. We haven't donated to the children yet. I reminded her softly. Eleanor bent down and kissed me. My assistant took care of it. Eleanor, my heart, I don't think I can. In the dim room, I felt waves of dizziness. The familiar feeling of oxygen deprivation washed over me. I gripped her arm, turning my head to gasp for air. Eleanor pressed her forehead against mine. Leo! I could feel how much she was struggling to hold back. And yet, my own body was so infuriatingly weak. Eleanor, maybe you should find a healthy husband. Leo Jones. Eleanor's eyes held a rare seriousness. There's no shortage of healthy men in the world. But the way I am, what's wrong with the way you are? She brushed the sweat-soaked hair from my forehead. Leo, in my eyes, you are the best. Eleanor, if your health is poor, we'll take care of it, bit by bit. If Hong Kong can't fix it, we'll go to Boston or D.C. Or we'll go abroad. And if it still can't be cured? Eleanor leaned down and kissed me gently. Then I'll live a life of abstinence. It'll be a good chance to focus on my career. As the new year approached, Eleanor finally had some free time. She took me to Boston, saying the best cardiac surgeons in the world were there now. I was very nervous before the examination. We'll do our part and leave the rest to fate. Eleanor habitually straightened my collar. Go on. I'll be right here waiting for you. After all the detailed, professional tests were done, the elderly specialist with a full head of white hair looked at me with a sigh. I've reviewed your reports. Your case of congenital heart disease is not severe. If you had undergone timely surgery as a child, you would have been fully recovered long ago. I stared at the doctor in disbelief, shaking my head. Doctor, are you mistaken? My whole life, my family told me my illness was incurable. They took me to so many hospitals, and they all said the same thing. Eventually, I refused to go to the hospital anymore. I couldn't bear to hear my own death sentence repeated over and over. They told me all they could do was spend money to carefully manage my health, that it was thanks to them I even survived to adulthood. When Eleanor pulled me into her arms, I realized tears were streaming down my face. They lied to me, didn't they? Why would they lie to me? Why would they do this to me? If they didn't want to treat me, they could have abandoned me, given me away. Why lie to me? Lie to me for so many years. Leo, don't think about these questions. You can get healthy. That's more important than anything else, you know? I just don't understand. Eleanor held me tighter. Then don't think about things that have no meaning. Let's look forward. Don't look back. When the spring blossoms bloomed, Eleanor came to take me back to New York. By then, I had been safely discharged from the hospital and was recovering well. Her grandmother had been in critical condition a few days prior, and she had flown back overnight to be at the hospital. It wasn't until the old woman pulled through again that she was able to relax. She and I hadn't seen each other for a full 2 weeks. Eleanor got out of the car, her arms open, waiting for me. I ran down the steps, across the green and yellow garden, running lightly in the spring breeze. For the first time in 21 years, I was running like this. Even the slightly chilly spring wind felt warm. Eleanor and I had been married for almost a year, but that night was the first time I saw her truly let herself go. She kissed the scar on my chest. The mark from the surgery was still clear, a little ugly. I didn't want her to see it, and I raised a hand to cover it. But Eleanor wouldn't let me. Is it ugly? It's just as captivating as it was that first night. So you were after me from the very beginning. No, much earlier than you think. When was that? Have you seen me before? Leo, are you sure you want to reminisce with your wife at a time like this? I tried my old trick. She didn't fall for it, of course, but she still stopped at the most intense moment. My heart was beating fast, but it no longer felt like it was being ripped apart. The only thing surging in my chest was an irrepressible tide of passion. I wrapped myself around her, lightly biting her jaw. Eleanor, you don't have to worry about my health anymore. From now on, you can do whatever you want. I had seen Eleanor give a keynote at a Bay Area conference, serious and professional. I had seen her in her office holding multinational meetings, fluent in English, French, and Cantonese. At home, in private, she also had a relaxed, easygoing side. Even the household staff dared to joke with her. But the moment she dropped her smile, everyone around her would fall silent. And the her of this moment, her eyes held a clear desire and a powerful possessiveness. She let herself sink into passion, falling with me into the intoxicating world of the senses. In the endless pleasure, she seemed even more unrestrained, more invested than I was. Before, I never understood why my own family would treat me that way. Only later did I understand. The 21 years of suffering and grievance were only to lead me to Eleanor Vance again. Eleanor, are you? It was the first time I had asked. I hadn't even finished my sentence, but it was as if Eleanor knew what I wanted to ask. Her kiss landed by my ear, her warm, wet fingers tangling tightly with mine. I heard her voice, husky, low, and seductive. I'm crazy about you, Leo.